The most audacious moment in 1876 began when Henry Wickham, an English plant collector with a quiet, determined manner, walked out of the tangled edge of the Amazon with a burlap sack of seeds and a secret that would remake two continents. By the 1870s, the Amazon's wild Hevea brasiliensis, the rubber tree, had become the raw material of modern life. Bicycle tires, carriage boots, and the burgeoning electrical industry turned latex into gold. Rubber barons in Manaus and Belém grew fabulously wealthy. Teak and marble opera houses and imported carriages announced a city built on tapped sap. But that wealth rested on one fragile fact. Supply came from wild trees scattered across the rainforest. There were no plantations, no predictable harvests, and no easy way for outsiders to replicate the network of tappers, the seringueiros, who wandered river basins to harvest latex. Enter Wickham. Working in 1876 in the Brazilian state of Pará, he collected tens of thousands of seeds and dispatched them to the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew under a guise of scientific study. What he did was not mere collecting, it was industrial espionage. The seeds were the technological key the British Empire lacked. Kew's gardeners coaxed a fraction of them into seedlings. By 1877 and the following years, young Hevea plants were being shipped to botanical stations and private planters in Ceylon, Sri Lanka, Singapore, and British Malaya. The conspiracy, if that is the right word, was both simple and audacious. Wickham exploited gaps in local control and the biological vulnerability of the Amazonic rubber economy. Brazil's advantage depended on the difficulty of cultivating Hevea outside its native forest. Wickham's shipment changed that. In controlled plantation settings, European planters could water, care for, and protect rows of rubber trees, dramatically reducing the cost and improving yields. Within decades, Southeast Asian plantations mechanized and scaled production in ways the scattered forest-based Amazon system could not match. The human story was intense and brutal. In the Amazon, the rubber boom intensified a regime of extraction that relied on coerced labor, debt peonage, and violent oversight. Seringueiros, often indigenous people or migrants, worked under onerous contracts and violent middlemen. The great mansions in Manaus, the Teatro Amazonas, opened in 1896 as a gilded emblem of rubber riches, stood above rivers where thousands suffered to collect the commodity that filled those coffers. Across oceans, the seedlings Wickham helped smuggle thrived. By the early 20th century, Britain's new plantations flooded global markets with cheaper plantation-grown rubber. The Amazon's monopoly collapsed. Entire economies that had boomed on wild rubber prices staggered. The city of Manaus, once aglow with imported electricity and opera, faced economic shock and social dislocation when Asian rubber supplanted Amazonian exports. The story is more than botanical trivia. It is a documentary of power, botanical knowledge weaponized by empire, markets reshaped by a single illicit act, and lives rearranged by the silent commerce of seeds. Wickham's name is a footnote in many histories, but the consequences were vast. Technological transfer disguised as science, a clear-cut advantage converted into global dominance, and an ecological and human upheaval that echoed through the rainforest communities. In Brazil, historians still debate Wickham's culpability and the ethical shape of botanical collecting in the Age of Empires. In Britain, Kew's role sits at the center of a colonial story, gardens as nodes of empire. The conspiracy was not a whispered plot in a single room, but an institutional alignment, commerce, science, and imperial ambition converging on a single biological secret. When you stand today beside the faded facades of Manaus or read the reports of Seringueiros' lives, you can trace a line back to that audacious moment in 1876 when Henry Wickham closed a burlap sack and changed the map of modern industry. The tale is a reminder that discoveries can be thefts, that seeds carry more than life. They carry power, profit, and the capacity to remake distant worlds.